Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in maybe another minute or so. And I've put into the chat, I'll do it again, just the resources for these recent talks on wisdom, including a new resource today that wasn't there last week, and the chant that we'll be doing in just a moment. And as we're waiting for people to gather, this is a good time just to do your best to connect with the community, look around on the Zoom, and even those of you who are listening later on YouTube live stream, just to take responsibility for this sense of belonging, because it's very easy in our lives we don't even realize that we're reinforcing an idea of isolation. I'm all alone. No one loves me. Things like that. These are chronic habits in our mind, and they can be countered by actively noticing how we're together, how we belong together. Doesn't mean it's perfect or sort of, in some utopian sense, harmonious. It just means that we're not alone. And this is just one time to take a few moments to connect. And I appreciate people putting a hello, whatever that might look like, into the chat in these opening minutes as we settle in. And again, if you'd like to do the opening reflection this morning, we won't be chanting the Pali. These last number of weeks, we've been learning this Pali chant used in early Buddhism, especially at funerals and memorial services. Nicca vata sankara upadawa yaidamano upajituwa nirushanti te sang upasamo sukho. But we'll just reflect on the English translation as we settle into our sitting posture this morning. Oh, I'll put in the link 1 second here. Okay, let's try this link. So again, the English translation that we're just going to repeat silently in our own minds, each of us. Feel free to adapt and adjust it. All conditioned things, this experience right here, every emotion I felt, every experience I've had, all conditioned things arise and pass away. And understanding this deeply, being truly intimate with this truth that things come and go, leads to the deepest happiness, which is peace. So settle into your meditation posture as best you can, and just bring to mind this reflection. And I'll say it out loud a few more times. All conditioned things arise and pass away. Understanding this deeply leads to the greatest happiness, which is peace. And one of my teachers simplifies this as, keep calmly knowing change. So whatever it is that's predominant now in our experience, the sensations of sitting, or some obsessive mental state, planning, or whatever it might be, we just keep calmly noticing that that phenomena is changing. It's in motion already. We don't need to wish this to be true. Instead, we're just learning to recognize that everything comes and goes. That this is really the nature of all experience, internal, external. and that nothing lies outside of this truth, that all conditioned things come and go. Even attitudes of heart, emotions, and sensations that feel permanent or fixed. The more we relax, the more the awareness, present moment awareness, stabilizes, the more the mind or wisdom realizes that even these seemingly fixed, solid, permanent things are emotion, coming and going, intensifying or weakening. And in this way, keeping this basic reflection in mind, we're just learning to come into the river of the present moment, the river of our lives. And as we're sitting and meditating together this morning, using more of an open awareness practice, feel free, if you're comfortable, just to keep the eyes open. We're not looking at the computer screen, we're just gazing softly, maybe toward the floor in front of us, soft gaze. It's not really about looking at anything. It's more about not being afraid of the sensitivity of the body, seeing, hearing, feeling sensations, smells and tastes. So we can have or cultivate a welcoming attitude about the sensitivity through our 5 physical senses, undefended, happy to be open or even exposed to sights coming and going, sounds, sensations, smells and tastes, probably to a lesser degree. And the 6th sense is this activity of mind, thoughts, emotions, feelings, also in motion. And the first instruction that we can remember as often as is helpful, the first instruction is to relax. Whatever the heart is opening to now in the present moment, it's already this way, this moment. So maybe it's okay to relax, to soften. Maybe it's okay now, moment by moment, to be undefended. Not trying to get somewhere, not trying to fix something. So basically, this instruction to relax, it actually arises out of a profound, deep wisdom. That this moment, life in this moment, doesn't need to be a struggle. So we're at least willing to open to that possibility by relaxing and softening and letting the armor, the defendedness fall away as best we can. And we could call this a willingness to more fully inhabit the moment, inhabit, embodiment, the experience of the body. And by this experience of the body, we mean these sensitivities through the 5 senses. Seeing is like this, hearing, feeling the sensations, smelling and tasting, And this invitation to relax, of course, is not a one-time thing that we do at the beginning of a sit, but actually we need to keep it in mind, this invitation to soften and relax. And we might even need to verbalize it silently in the mind and the heart many times during the sitting time. Honey, it is okay to relax as best you can now. Maybe it's okay to be exposed to feel what I'm feeling. So the first instruction is the invitation to relax. The second instruction, the second of 3 instructions, is to recognize awareness. So it's not trying to be aware or doing awareness. It's recognizing there is awareness. So what's the mind knowing now? This experience is being known. So clarifying the experience here in the moment that's being felt or being known. Remember, sometimes confusion is being known. Sometimes ambiguity is being known. But awareness is always ready, like a mirror that is willing to effortlessly reflect whatever happens in front of it. This is a nice simile for awareness. So the second instruction is to recognize awareness. This experience is being known. Naturally, effortlessly. Now, of course, this is relatively subtle. So the work is to keep this in mind, that there is awareness that is knowing, that is reflectively knowing, this is being known. And all of this can happen without needing to use words in the mind. But you can also use this thought that I'm saying out loud when that structure or that support is helpful. What's being known? This is being known. Thinking is being known. Hearing is being known. Sensation in the knee is being known, being felt. So that verbalization or that labeling or mental noting is just one technique that can be used to activate this second instruction, which is to recognize awareness, recognizing present moment awareness. And the mind is always capable. This present moment awareness is always available. But it needs to be recognized. So only 3 instructions. And you need to take responsibility for bringing any of these 3 instructions to mind. First one is to relax, soften. It's okay to relax. The second is to recognize there is this awareness, this present moment awareness, because this experience is being known. And awareness, in a sense, can reflectively know that this experience is being known. And the third instruction to play with is to recognize that whatever it is that's being known is the activity of nature. A couple of weeks ago, we used this simile of a river. Bodily experience is in motion. Mental activity is in motion. The river of our life. And this movement, this activity of body and mind is nature, not self, not really personal in the way we might think. So the third instruction is really inviting a correction in attitude or view. Is this nature, or is it all about me and mine? No, it's just causes and conditions coming and going because of the impersonal nature of all things. This thought is showing up. This emotion is being felt. This sound is being heard. Not really personal. And this is true with external experience as it is with internal experience, thoughts and emotions. Like weather, emotions and thoughts come and go due to causes and conditions, none of which are really that personal. Just the natural playing out of causes and conditions. And this attitude or view can be developed by just remembering this third instruction to check the attitude. Is the mind understanding things in a personal way, taking things personally? Or is the mind now understanding things as a movement of nature? That's all. It's not about enforcing the right view. It's about checking the view or checking one's attitude. Taking things personally, then notice how that is. Seeing things as a natural unfolding, impersonal unfolding, seeing how that is. And those are the three instructions that we get to play with in this open awareness practice. So we have about 20 minutes left. We'll just sit in silence now, and you can experiment with these three instructions to relax, to recognize awareness, and to check one's attitude, taking things personally or seeing the unfolding as a natural process. And just an encouragement to take our time this morning just to work with these 3 simple instructions to relax, to recognize the present moment awareness that's here and now. What's the mind knowing? And from time to time to check the attitude. Is the mind's understanding or attitude taking things personally? Or can the mind recognize what's happening as a natural process, whether it's internal or external causes and conditions? That's all, just those 3 instructions. See if these are enough to support the spiritual learning or insight. And we're going to be sitting for a few more minutes. Just reminding the heart to relax, the body to relax. And recognizing present moment awareness. And present moment awareness is naturally inclusive, even though in moments we might recognize something very specific that's showing up in the moment. But the totality of experience is right there in the background, even if something specific is in the foreground. So notice that inclusive nature when you recognize present moment awareness. What's the mind knowing? And finally, checking the attitude. And notice the difference when the mind is taking things personally, framing things in a personal way. And in other moments, the mind seeing experience as a natural process, an impersonal and natural process, causes and conditions, like weather. Whether we're looking at our own mood, or we're looking at sound or sensation. How to be in the middle of the river of this life without needing friction of any kind. And take a little time, adjust the body. Really nice to be with everybody this morning. And I think most of you know, but this is especially relevant for those of you in the local community, that we are allowing people to come into the space for the Sunday morning program. I sit here in the teacher office, but I think there's a dozen or so people now in the room. And so if you live nearby and you want to come in and sit, and that allows the small groups to happen in person. And they've been sitting outside the last few weeks together to have a 15, 20-minute conversation about the teachings after the talk. So keep that in mind if that makes sense for you. And as you probably know, with our in-person programs, we're closely monitoring the changing nature of the virus and the Delta variant. So please read the weekly email if you're coming to in-person programs at the center to understand what the latest protocols will be. We're still kind of monitoring and figuring out whether and when changes might be needed. So this week I'm talking about wisdom. This is the third talk on wisdom. We've been looking at this really wonderful list of human qualities: generosity, moral sensitivity, the quality of renunciation, wisdom, In a week or so, we'll be moving on to energy and patience and truthfulness, resoluteness, equanimity, and loving kindness. And these are called the 10 Paramis, or 10 perfections of the heart. And mythologically, these are the qualities that the Buddha developed over many lifetimes, so that in his last life, he had the sort of support and the personality to wake up. But just generally, they're thought of as the qualities of the heart and mind that support awakening. And I've been saying all along that when we get interested in even just one of these qualities, like wisdom, what is wisdom? And a better way, the better question may be, what is ignorance? Because that we can get to know pretty closely and intimately, even as a beginner. But as just the investigation itself, it will involve a lot of generosity and a lot of moral sensitivity, and deepen the understanding of renunciation and the commitment to being truthful and honest with ourselves, and the kind of persistent energy that keeps what we're learning in mind, so it can be distilled and refined and brought to life in a way. So any of these wholesome qualities start to lead to all the other wholesome qualities, and that keeps it really simple. And one important corrective around wisdom, because in English, the way we use wisdom, it's similar to knowledge, as if I own the wisdom, I have the wisdom, it's some possession of mind. But in early Buddhism, wisdom is much more of an activity, and an activity that needs to be done continuously. So we never kind of have the wisdom gold and then, like, I got it in my bank, I'm set, I got the wisdom I needed. But it's really like a way of being, a way of living, where my mind is learning to value the stability of present moment awareness, so that I can be intimate. And when I'm really there in the moment, seeing things, opening to things as they are, then the response, how I think, how I speak, how I act, it really comes out of that balanced intimacy. And so that I'm just naturally more skillful, more nimble in how I respond to the twists and turns of life. So that's why, like, especially in some of the later Zen traditions, they had this really wonderful teaching as, like, what is, somebody asked one of the Zen patriarchs in China, what is the best teaching, the highest teaching? And this is, it's kind of endemic in our minds to kind of want the best. Oh, don't teach me about generosity. I want the deepest teaching that will really liberate my heart. And this wise person, their response to this question, what is the highest, what is the best teaching, is an appropriate response. And you see how it doesn't give us what I want. I want the answer, but that response really tells us that whatever wisdom, whatever the highest teaching is, it allows for moment by moment for an appropriate response to the moment. And what the appropriate response in this moment or the next moment or an hour later when you're eating lunch or whatever, we don't know the appropriate response ahead of time, because the appropriate response arises in that moment when our heart is balanced, clearly aware, relaxed, recognizing in present moment awareness, seeing things as a natural process. That really allows the heart to be intimate, and being intimate to sense, to see, to understand the underlying nature of the mind, of experience. And that impersonal nature, the natural wildness of the present moment, then what we say or don't say, what we think or don't think, what we do or don't do, it literally arises out of the moment. So it's appropriate. It's not arising out of a fixed view of who I think I am and how I think I should be skillful, which will always be limited. Stephen Batchelor, in a short article about this, he says it's like, you might have the best hammer in the world. It's a great hammer, like perfectly balanced, really good. But if you need to cut through a piece of wood, that tool isn't very useful. But if you were somehow gifted or discovered the best hammer in the whole world, you might like really get attached, like, okay, this is a great, and you might have used it a few times to pound a nail, and it like works so well. And then it might be that a lot of our effort is just to convince others that I've got the best tool. My God's bigger than your God. My spiritual teachings are wiser than your spiritual teachings. But that hammer, like this is how the Buddha and others in early Buddhism, they talk about the Buddhist teachings as a kind of medicine. But medicines are very specific to the imbalance or whatever might be off in the system. If our problem is diabetes, we don't need this incredible surgeon to get in there and clear the blockages from our arteries. We need some other kind of medicine. Or if we have a broken leg, we don't need somebody who's a brain surgeon. We need somebody who knows how to fix a broken leg. So that's really what wisdom does. Wisdom is this capacity to be intimate, the stabilizing. And in a way, in early Buddhism, the proximate cause for wisdom is this samadhi, this stability of present moment awareness. Because when the heart is really connected, no agenda except to connect, to be balanced and aware. And not aware in order to even see something, but just to receive. So in a real receptive sense. Because the thing is, what we understand as wisdom, it doesn't come from a view, right? Like to really, I always give the example of a naturalist or biologist or somebody studying whatever aspect of nature. If the way they're observing comes with an agenda or a fixed view, then the results of their observation is going to be skewed. So we always like the observing to be independent. So that's in like when we say balanced present moment awareness, we really mean an independent, like an awareness that simply wants to connect, simply wants to feel and see and experience things as they are. So a lot of our teachings, like even the teaching, that third instruction, right? Oh, is this nature or is this self? In a way is a corrective, because there's this chronic habit we have to project a self-centered view on all of our experience. Then we have this medicine that comes in, this corrective. Oh, is it self? Is it personal? What's happening? The emotions that are moving in my heart right now, is that personal? Or is that just a impersonal activity of the heart? Like this weather system of emotion has its own causes and conditions why the heart's feeling what it's feeling. It's lawful, it's conditional, but not really personal in the sense that I'm doing it, or even that it's happening to me. I mean, it's okay to language our experience with personal pronouns. There's nothing inherently wrong with using I, me, and mine, the personal pronouns. But it doesn't, that self-view doesn't actually line up with our experience, because our experience, our subjective actual experience, is sadness is being known. It isn't, I'm sad. So if I talk to a friend and I say to them, I'm sad, that's okay to use that language that way. But more accurately, we should have said, sadness was being known, or sadness was being felt. It feels like this, it's heavy, or it's hot, or it's intense, or I'm tightening up around it, right? These sort of impersonal reality, like this is my subjective experience of emotionality right now. Or happiness is like this, lightness of heart is like this. The movement of joy, the expansiveness of joy is like this now. I mean, imagine if, in our close relationships, we would, and then, and the appropriate question is always, how are you doing? Sit down to have a meal with a friend or whatever, your partner at the end of the day. How was your day, honey? How are you doing? And we would describe it as weather, like, well, early in the day, the sun was shining, cool breezes, delightful. And then there was some storminess. It got really intense, some really, intense destruction, a lot of damage. Going to need to make some amends down the road for all the destruction. Sounds a little bit like a joke, but feel how much more light that is to understand our internal experiences of body, heart, and mind, our external experiences of relationship and involvement and choices as an activity of nature and not self. And this isn't, like I said, it isn't about, because this does happen in Buddhist centers and Buddhist practice, where we get attached to the ideas of emptiness, the emptiness of self-centeredness, and the mind, the ego, gets established in the idea it's impersonal. We want to build a shrine in our heart. It's all impersonal. It's all nature. And then it's like we want to do battle with people who think it's self. But it's all egoic. It's all self-centered stuff, because it isn't arising out of the moment. These teachings are tools for particular ailments. So when I have the chronic habit to take things personally, then that question, is it personal or is it nature, is like really good medicine. But I don't want to take that medicine and make a religion out of it, because that's not its purpose. Its purpose is this corrective for some chronic habit, which is for this mind to project a self-centered story on all experience. So then we get this teaching. And that's the way to think about wisdom is, and I love this from one of my important teachers, Sayadaw U Tejaniya, this Burmese teacher. And it was one of these one-off comments. I think I might have mentioned it last week even, but he said something like, wisdom knows, or wisdom sees causes. That's what wisdom does. It illuminates the conditional nature, the causal nature of what's showing up in our experience. Just then drop from outer space, the mood we have, the sensations we're feeling, the sounds we're hearing, what's being seen. But everything is in, this unfolding, this lawful unfolding of causes and conditions. And that's what wisdom discerns, moment by moment. Wisdom is that discerning factor of mind that is discerning the lawful conditional nature. And that lawful conditional unfolding is what we call nature, not self. There's no, in a sense, beginning, or that unfolding, whether we're talking about the unfolding of emotion or the unfolding of cognitive activity or the unfolding of sound or unfolding of act, like we imagine. To me, it is just that unfolding being felt or being seen or being understood. That is the subjective reality. There is something unfolding in terms of the sensitivity of the mind and body. There's something unfolding which is being known. And this really leads to, like, what do we do with this discerning capacity of our mind? And the Buddha tells us, get interested, and it's really more of a realization. What is the heart already interested in? Because we're going to use this discerning capacity of our heart to discern what the heart is naturally interested in. What is our heart, mind naturally interested in? Stress and the cessation of stress, existential uneasiness and burdensomeness, and the release, the unbinding of that existential weight. I don't have to try to be curious about that. I mean, we get distracted, right? We get in our whirlpools of distraction, neurotic activity, but when we're settled, we naturally care about how this heart is wrapped up in a knot and how this knot, this heaviness, can unwind. And that's really the teachings that are called the Four Noble Truths. And it's really a central teaching in all the lineages of Buddhism, not just early Buddhism, but this really placing the burdensomeness of the heart, the heaviness of our heart, the sense of the deep, subtle sense of lacking, not having enough, or the deep, subtle, chronic anxiety or fear, the grip in our hearts. And I know we can be watching a fun movie and we'll be oblivious to it. But then, later, maybe in the middle of the night, maybe when things settle down, we realize, oh yeah, what's going on here? And then the wisdom gets activated. Oh, I care about this. I'm going to track this. I'm going to presume that this dukkha, it's called, the suffering, this unsatisfactoriness, the thirst that can't be quenched. I'm assuming that, like everything, it's lawful, it's conditional, and I'm going to observe it in a balanced and somewhat independent manner. So I can really activate or live out this wholesome desire to understand what this dukkha is. We can't really study dukkha when we're taking it personally. It's one of those inevitable chicken and egg things that arise in spiritual practice, but we just do the best we can. It's like to gravitate toward more independence with whatever stress or uneasiness we're feeling in our life, experiencing in our life. We just have as much independence, as much spaciousness or equanimity with it so that we can get close to it. The spaciousness, equanimity, dispassion isn't to run away from it. It's medicine to get close to it. A lot of people misunderstand the equanimity and dispassion that's so central in the Buddhist teachings as some kind of escape from the messiness of the world or the heaviness of our hearts. But it's not that really. It's all about how can I get close? Because there's no insight, there's no liberating insight without being intimate. That's the basic equation. The stability of present moment awareness allows the heart to actually show up to life, to the moment. And it's this showing up without losing I don't know if independence is the right word, but this capacity to discern. So that capacity to discern depends on non-entanglement. So we always say, like, when we're just take some difficult emotion like being angry, having a lot of hate or full of lust or whatever emotion you can remember from the last 24 hours that sort of threw you around. But when the wisdom is able to see, oh, there's anger in the mind, that wisdom, knowing there's anger in the mind, is not the anger. If it is the anger, then it's not seeing it as anger. It is the sort of heavy, painful, stressful entanglement of anger. But whenever the mind is able, or wisdom is able to recognize, oh, there's anger here, there's lust here, there's denial here, that awareness of anger isn't anger. There's some independence, some space, and that allows to see anger a little bit more clearly for what it is. It's nature. It is the nature of the mind when there are these causes and conditions for the heart to express itself in this way. When there's identification, the unpleasantness is intensified. When there's more understanding, the space of wisdom, suffering goes away, diminishes a lot. And when the wisdom is really strong, suffering is not there. That's kind of amazing. So there may be the dying process that is really painful, or there may be some terrible emotional crisis, a breakup, or something really painful. And I'm guessing we already know the experience that in some moments that crisis is completely unbearable. And in other moments, lo and behold, it seems workable. And so what wisdom is really understanding the causes, like why is this life situation at some moments so unbearably painful that all I can imagine doing is closing down or striking back or basically adding fuel to the suffering, responding or reacting in unskillful ways. But other times, when there's more wisdom, more stability of present moment awareness, more space, more capacity to see that what's happening is a natural process that doesn't refer back to anybody. It's just what it is, this painful, emotional, natural process that feels like this and is in motion. This is the nature of the river, right? Sometimes the river is like intense rapids. Sometimes the river is nice and tranquil. It's always a river. It's always in motion. There's always the choice whether the heart is going to flail about or try to resist the river or get tight in one way or another, or just let the river be the river. And that's what wisdom is discerning, like when our response to the moment is adding more suffering, wisdom discerns the causes of that. Oh yeah, you're taking it personally and therefore reacting, and therefore things are getting more intense, more tight. Or, oh, there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of stability of wisdom awareness, a lot of space. Wisdom is letting the river of feeling, whatever those feelings might be, the river of sensation, the river of thought, just letting the river be the river. This is how it is. Now this, you see, it's a real big step for us because most of us, most of the time, have been reinforced for taking control, basically exerting our willful engagement with life. And then we've been taught that, oh yeah, you worked hard, you applied yourself, and you deserve the reward for that. And in a funny way, we are doing that with the Buddhist teachings, but the engagement is really distilled to one thing, which is this stability of wisdom awareness. That's the one way, the one thing in a way we get to do. And over time, even that is seen, like just the momentum of being aware is seen as nature and not self. So even the sense of me being the practitioner who is being awake to the moment, open, stable, balanced, even that is too much to sort of assume that role. Awareness also is seen as part of just another natural process that over time in our practice just has more and more momentum. And the habit of distractedness and superficiality and reactivity just becomes a weaker and weaker habit in the mind. So the whole awakening process, of course, is also nature and not self. Just like initially, we really rely on that teaching, that third instruction, is it nature, is it self, to really help loosen up, depersonalize the ignorant habits in our mind, in our personality. Oh yeah, there I go again. I'm defensive, I'm getting tight. Because I'm so tight, I'm not handling the situation very well. There's going to be all kinds of ripples, all kinds of fires I'm starting that I'm going to have to put out. This is nature. So that's how, make any sense for me to judge myself or hate myself. I'm not pretending the moment is more skillful than it is. It isn't that skillful right now. I'm acting out. It's like this. But I have this growing capacity to see this as nature in itself. So I'm not going to worsen the situation by painting a self-centered story on top of my inability to be so skillful right now. It really simplifies those places in our lives where we're less than skillful, because we see them as nature and not self. Oh yeah. And it really protects us when we are really nimble and skillful and creative and brilliant and fearless and patient, and find ourselves saying just the right thing, or find ourselves refraining from saying something that could have caused some real problems. We also, the mind is getting trained to say, oh yeah, that's also, that brilliance, that skillfulness, that was nature. That wasn't self. People will say, Mark, you were brilliant, but I won't get confused by that praise, right? Because that was just nature. That was what happens when the mind has been trained to not take these off ramps into hatred and greed and superficiality and delusion, and stay in the river of just responding from intimacy. A lot of skillfulness starts to show up. And we don't have to bother being prideful or thinking it's me, because it doesn't help to think it's me. It just makes things tight again. Because all of a sudden we're somebody that has to be protected. Our brilliance now is just another thing that needs to be protected. And all of a sudden there's a sense of somebody who's afraid of being less than brilliant, right? But that doesn't help. Being afraid of making a mistake doesn't keep us from making mistakes. It's already a mistake to be afraid of making mistakes, right? Because we're not in that nimble moment of really valuing the one thing that helps, which is being awake, being open, relaxed, recognizing present moment awareness, and keeping the attitude, oh, this is nature. Like keeping open that's good medicine. This is nature, not self. This is just the natural activity of causes and conditions, whether internal or so-called external. It's just stuff unfolding. And I can be really right in the middle of this river. I can be feeling, opening, however intense or however ordinary or tranquil the moment might be. I have this capacity to be intimate, to be interested both in a breadth of awareness, but also that depth of subtlety. We want both. Mindfulness has the capacity both for the breadth, which really allows to see the causal unfolding, and the depth is like, well, what's not being recognized here? What's here that is too subtle, or the mind isn't in the habit of recognizing? And this is really how we build that discerning part of wisdom. And the last thing I want to share this morning around wisdom really has to do with the 12 insights that come out of this teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And I just think it's unfortunate that that's what we call it in Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths, because it has this sense of something solid. Okay, I have the wisdom of the Four Noble Truths. I understand it cognitively. I own it in some way. But it's actually divided up as 12 insights, 12 ways of discerning the way it is. Oh, there is suffering. This heart is bound up. This is a teacher, not a problem, right? That's a second. So the first is just to recognize, oh, this heart is resisting, this heart is heavy. I'm not completely free, right? That's an insight. Oh yeah. And we want that insight over and over again. And then when we have that insight, we can have open to the second insight. This, my heart being bound up, this is relevant. This is like a teacher. There's something to learn here about this is relevant, this heart being bound up. And then when we've really opened to the unsatisfactory or stressful aspect of the moment, we have the insight, the truth of suffering right now as it actually exists in my heart has been seen, is being felt. And that sort of shifts us into another set of insights around the cause. This is a lawful thing, this suffering, this stress in my heart. There's a cause. The cause is attachment to desire. The mind is identified with desire, identified with doing. It isn't the doing and it isn't the desiring, it's the identification. That's a discernment. Because otherwise we pathologize desire. Well, it's like pathologizing life, because life is just nothing but the activity of desire. But when we misunderstand desire as something that I get attached to, I personalize, then we got problems. The cause is this attachment to desire. It should be abandoned. This is not like, ooh, I don't want to be attached to desire. It's like really seeing that the identification or attachment to desire is the problem. And we keep that in mind. Oh yeah, this is the problem. This needs to be abandoned. It's the seeing that it needs to be abandoned that supports the letting go. Not you getting rid of the attachment. Have you ever been able to get rid of an attachment? You can feel attachment. You can feel the crunch or the grip of attachment or identification. You can stabilize. You can be interested in it. And then letting go will happen. Letting go absolutely will happen when attachment is seen for what it is. A lot of people will ask me sometimes in a practice meeting, I'm attached, I see it, but it doesn't go away. Well, that's the information we're getting is maybe I haven't really opened to the experience of attachment or identification. Maybe there's more to feel and see here. So some more humility, some more patience, some more interest, curiosity. What is this attachment? What is this identification with this desire? And then it releases. That's an insight. And then this sort of maturing of that insight we call cessation, where selfing, craving drops out of the mind. Because everything is impermanent. Craving comes and go, attachment comes and go. But when that insight of the mind without craving, this is cessation. This cessation, this experience of cessation, the non-selfing, the mind free of grasping, should be fully realized. It has been fully realized. Those are the next three insights. And then it's all about how to live a life that matures that insight, which we call in Buddhism and early Buddhism the path, the Eightfold Path. There is a path, it should be developed, it has been developed. So I'll come back to these 12 insights next week or last week talking about wisdom. But you can just begin to practice. And what I thought in the small groups today is just this. And again, remember, if you can't stay for the small groups, just find a time to journal, to reflect, or to talk with a good friend about this topic. Because there's something about the integrity of being in conversation with a good Dharma friend around, like the topic for today is, what is your experience of seeing attachment to desire or identification with desire? So there's a desiring going on, and you can discern that independent part of the mind that is claiming it as me or mine, the desiring. And then what is your experience of when that attachment to desire goes away or falls away or weakens? So what's your experience of desire without attachment or identification? And what's your experience of desire when there is attachment and identification? So this is really our homework this week. And for those who are able to stay with the small group, I think Shannon's here today to lead the small groups, to organize them. It's just a 15-minute little sacred community, groups of 3 and 4. Each person gets a chance to speak for 2 or 3 minutes without interruption, and then an open discussion for the last 5 or 7 minutes, and then it will end around noon today. But you can find a time to have that conversation whenever it works this next week or several times this next week. Want to make a few other announcements before people leave. Just we have a work retreat at Prairie Farm for people in the area, Common Grounds retreat property near Prairie Farm, Wisconsin. And that's the week of the 9th through the 14th. Especially interested in some skilled, handy folks with not just hammers, but other tools to work with Corey, our construction manager out there, and a number of other retreat leaders who will be out there that week. And you can come out for a day, or you can come out for several days. Just contact the office. I'll be leading a half-day retreat on August 14th. And this coming Friday, I'll lead the Loving Kindness Practice Group, 7 to 8:30 Minnesota time. Always the first, or almost always the first Friday of the month. And then Jean and Jane lead the Self-Compassion Group, the third Friday of the month. And Stacy McClendon leads the group on the fourth Friday of the month. So we have 3 opportunities to do the self-compassion, loving kindness practices every month. And of course, many other programs. Get yourself on the weekly email. You can send the office an email, info@commongroundmeditation.org, or just go online to sign up for that weekly email on our website. So Shannon, are you here now?
Yes, I'm here. And there was a request, Mark, to repeat the homework.
Yeah, the homework is basically the same as our topic for the small groups, which is to get interested in attachment to desire in moments where there's desiring, but you have a lot more space, non-attachment, non-identification with the desiring. And what happens when you see attachment to desire? Does the attachment cease on its own? Or do you have to get in there and make it cease? Because we really want to see how the attachment to desire ceases on its own when it's seen for what it is, not needed.